Hilly Hilly, welcome to the first Chukchansi Language class. We're excited to bring to you a new set of classes that are pretty in-depth. So we'll get started. So we're going to start with our language history. We're going to have two different classes on our language history, kind of like the far away arching view of how we got into our language family and who is related to us linguistically. How did that process happen over time? Then we'll also look at more recent things, like what specifically caused us to lose our language. So we're going to have like a two-part series on that. And really, it's the history of our tribe. The two things go hand in hand. So we'll give an introduction of who's involved with language. We're going to also go over classroom features, like how to access Google Classroom and access our materials. Our first story is going to be the creation story. We use stories to learn our language because it gives a good example of whole language, and then we pull out important elements and study those. We're going to have a shallow history of Chukchansi, kind of like the slides that talk about how we ended up in our language family. We'll have some target words and a mini spelling test for the week. Here is our language team. This is the linguistic side of things. So these are all the Fresno State professors that are involved with language with us. And the first here on the far left is Nikin Adisa Smido Smith. She's our go-to for the dictionary and doing a lot of the groundwork, like the day-to-day of how we ask questions to Holly and document those words and sounds. Most of you know Holly Wyatt is our language teacher, and she's been involved with language since 2007. One of the only fluent speakers we have left, so she's been a great help to do all of this work for us. Brian Agbayani, he does a lot of breaking down words into smaller pieces and studying that part of it for the grammar. And then Chris, he does a lot of the grammar writing. He likes to really be involved with the people and answering a lot of questions, so he comes up a lot. So you might see Chris frequently. Then our language team, which I don't have a picture yet, hopefully we'll get one soon. I'm Kim Lahan. I've been involved with language mostly through the school since I started working for the tribe in 2005. And then since then, I've just moved to the school district, but still teach it as an elective. Ted Atkins is the director for language at the tribe, so language and culture department. Shauna is the primary intern that does a lot of the teaching. She's been involved with language just in her personal life for quite a while, so she's really good about learning the more advanced grammar. Dustin Johnson was raised speaking Chukchansi, so he's a great gift to the tribe to be a native speaker of Chukchansi and still be rather young, so he's giving us a lot more time with the language. That's awesome, and I can't wait for you to meet him and hear how amazing his words sound. And then Michaela Cunnings, she's new to language as an intern, and she helps out the department a lot, so hopefully you can meet her as well. So classroom rules. Anytime we're in the state of language that we are, so our language is endangered. We only have less than 10 speakers left. So it's really important that since we have 99.9% of the tribe that doesn't know the language, it's really important that everyone is really encouraging to each other. And there still are people, different families that have language that they have within their families. So it's really important that the ones that don't know language are really encouraged to continue it. And so just making sure that you're being positive, even if it doesn't sound right, even if they're way off, just laughing together and moving forward together with our learning is really important. Mistakes are okay. It's part of improving. Feel free to pause the video and make sure that you're echoing words that you hear in the videos. And also, you could also make sure that you write down words that when you're spelling them, that you spell them in a way that you could remember until you get used to the spelling system. And there are variations within families. So if you feel like you said it a different way, then you can make sure that you write it down how your family says that word. Then the last thing is use language as often as possible. Practice anything daily, and it will really help to solidify your learning here in these 2-week sessions. So this next part is our classroom features. So I will post that for you to see how to access all the classroom materials. Okay, so for fall of 2023, we're going to have a Google Classroom where I could push out different resources to you and practice assignments or quizzes that you could take, videos, all kinds of things in there. So if you're not familiar with how to join a Google Classroom, I'm going to play this YouTube video, how to join a class on Google Classroom by Insider Tech. Gives some good instructions, so I just wanted to play that really quick so those of you who are joining us for this fall class session can know how to get there.
You can join a class on Google Classroom with a class link or code. Go to classroom.google.com. Click the plus sign in the upper right corner. Now click Join Class and enter the code you received for the class session.
Okay, so I'm going to show you the class session code that we have. So it is right here, HGUTV, then the number 5 and N. So that's all we're going to do to add to the Google Classroom. And inside our Google Classroom, under this tab, Classwork, for this first class session, we have some items that I posted for you to add your input in. This one is a survey. It's your availability. So what is the best time in the evening for you to have a class if you're actually able to come and join in the live session? I kind of wanted just to see what the best time frame and day of the week is for everybody. So if you can join into the Google Classroom and find this survey, it'd be great if you could add your input there. Also the language history Kahoot, we'll get to that. That's going to be one of our practice assignments that you have that you can go in there, and once we're done with the history part, that you can do that activity. We also have in here the detailed history of our language that Chris wrote. It's kind of like the long ago history, like how did we end up our own dialect and in our language family. This is really interesting. I think a lot of you might want to go through and look at this. This is an ethnography that was done by Gayton in 1945, and Chukchansi details start up on page 42. But a lot of you that are joining in for language are also here because you have just that need to fill an understanding of Chukchansi identity and things that we used to do, not just the language portion. So this is actually on the Berkeley site that I have the link for this, and it's really amazing. It has just tons of information about our practices, tribal practices. There's lots of Chukchansi words. It's written in linguistic, by a linguist, or at least the translated words are maybe not how we would write them now, but you can kind of get a good idea for some of them. But I love all the detail that's in here. So if you're hungry for cultural understanding, that's a great place to pick up a lot of information, and it's a good read. Let's see what else is in there. We also have the actual text of the story that we're going to be doing today, all in this Google Classroom link. And again, I'll show you the code to that, HGUTV, all lowercase, then the number 5, and then the letter N. So eventually you'll be added, and you hopefully it's allowing anyone from any email address to add into there. We also have our additional teachers in there, so you guys can get any information. On the stream, I did put also the contact information for our linguists. So they love to get questions on our language, especially from a membership. So I have Brian, Nikin, and Chris on here. I put Chris first because he is probably going to be our main go-to for questions for the language. But if you have any questions and you want to email them, they would love to get that. And then I have our key vocabulary that we're going to be going over for this week, just to kind of get ourselves in the frame of mind for go-to words that are familiar. All right, for this next portion, we're going to go over the creation story. So myths are common across Yokut dialects. So other Central Valley Native American tribes all have really close creation stories, but each one is different and unique. And so it's really great that we're starting off with like the foundation of how we believe our Earth got here. So before we get started and diving straight into the story, we're actually going to cover some words that'll be like your go-to words to look at. So just these 5 words I want you to work on for this week, getting familiar with them. They repeat themselves in different forms throughout the story. So getting these down is really important, just as your kind of foundation. So the word for water is ilik, ilik, and we're going to go over vowels and consonants as we continue on with language, but just so that you have these down. This letter in the front of the word ilik is a glottal stop, and it does look like a question mark, but it goes all the way down to the ground solid. So just making sure that you know that that's a letter. So ilik and ilka. There's several ways to say each word, but when you memorize these two, it's really helpful as we move forward. So ilik, ilka. Then we have coyote, ka-yu, ka-yu. They both have glottal stops. They're going to end fast on both of those syllables. Then we have ka-yu-un. And it's best if you're going to memorize one of these forms. If you don't want to feel overwhelmed, just memorize the first form. If you can challenge yourself and try to remember the second form, that would be great too. The next word is cover. That's actually a verb, so like to cover something up. So sompto, sompto, and solmit. Sompto and solmit. Then you have duck. And duck is one of those special words where in English we might tell a child that a duck says what, or the duck says quack, quack. But in Chukchansi, we believe that a duck says what. So we named it based on what it says. So a duck is what, and it does have those clicky T's, like they kind of are crisper at the end. What. Then we have what, e. What, and what, e. Then the word for the ground or the world or the earth, it's all the same. So holkian, holki, holkian. And that K and then J are so close to each other and how you make that sound that sometimes people like mistake them for each other, but they are really close sounding to each other. So holki is that word, holki and holkian. So once again, we have ilik, katyu, sompto, what, holki. And we're going to get started on our story. So the creation of land is Holgian di Ishantau. So we have these words that we, pretty much all the words in the first sentence are ones that we put for memorizing for this week. So we have water, ilik, then sompto for covered, hityaan means like all of it or everything, holkian, like all over the world. So water covered all the world is ilik, sompto, hityaan, holkian. Then we have katyu, amayo, koliswa, what. So coyote and a little duck. Katyu is the coyote, and what, if you remember, was the duck. But we're calling it little duck. So koliswa goes with the word little. And there is a way that we say and. We say amayo, and that's how we say and. So coyote, katyu, and amayo, little duck, koliswa, what. Holshachon, sipin, ilkau. So holshachon means to be sitting. Holshachon. It's got that X, it has that glottal sound for us, that sound. Sipin is above or on the top. Then we have that word that, again, ilik was water. So ilkau is something on top of the water. So this is water in locative form. Then this next sentence, we're going to try to do the first 4 sentences really well. Then the two of them I'm going to read in English first and then we'll unpack it in Chukchansi. Then the two of them wondered how they could both shrink the water so the hills could come out so they both could eat. So it says mien, and that's the word for then. That's really common in storytelling to have mien a lot. It means like next or then. Then the word amak is the two of them. We actually have one word that means the two of them, amak. And we have hun to hun is to wonder or to be wondering. Hawitmi, that's the word for how. Amak, that's that same word, the two of them, they both. Na'ash is a word that we use for could or should or would. Na'ash. And then kolestal is to become small. So we translate that into shrink, but it's to become small. And then ilik, and that's that word again for water, but we have it in the other form, so ilka. Mien, we used it to translate the word so, but again, it kind of means like then or so or next. Mien. Na'ash dolol. So if you look, na'ash was already before, and we use that for could. So it's like the could or would or should. So in this case, the na'ash is for the English translation of would. And then the dolol is for the hills. So it directly translates into mien, so, na'ash, would or could, the hills, dolol, tishal, is to come out. So we can do things out of order in Chukchansi. We could change up the order. It's called free word order. So we could put it in any order we want, and it still pretty much means the same thing. So tishal is to come out. Then, so they could both eat. Khatal, amak, both of them. Khatal is could or would eat, like something you could do. And then na'ash is that, again, could or would or should. And then this last sentence that we're going to go over really well is mich ilik wa'a. So very, this is kind of out of order. So in English, we would use very later on the sentence, but in Chukchansi, we could say it right away. Very water deep is really what it translates in. And we don't need to use the word the or a in Chukchansi. So mich ilik wa'a, the water was very deep. And then chuyu ta hogi adlin. So holki is the land or the earth. Adlin is underneath, and chuyu ta, so could. So the land was underneath. And then we'll go over the rest of this story in English. So that we just got that first couple sentences that we wanted to make sure we had down in both languages, but we'll keep the story going in English so you could see it. So Coyote was a strong spirit. Then Coyote was thinking, then I will tell Duck, get sand from under the water. He told the duck, dive. Here's the continuation of the story. Then Duck dived under the water. Then Duck grabbed some earth with his claws, just like hands. Then as he came up out of the water, the sand dripped from his hands. Then he got above the water, and a little sand remained under his fingernails. Then Coyote took the sand and made a ball. Then he had some seed. They used to eat it. Then he had one seed. He put that seed in the ball of sand. Then the seed could make anything swell up over there. It swelled, drawing up the water. It was like a cloth. This living place, this land, was very dry. And that's kind of like where this story sort of ends, and there's a transition to a second part of the story. But this is really the pages and the sentences that we'll go over in Chukchansi to learn this creation story. And again, we're just going to keep these words in our mind and try to find them as often as possible as our go-to words. So we had water, ilik, and ilka. Then we had, and actually this has closed up here, coyote, caught you, and caught you un. To cover something was somto or somit. A duck was what or what-i. The world or the earth or the ground is holki and holkian. And just for fun, we're going to add this video, Hokkien de Shantao, so creation story. It's with students from the Course Gold School fall first trimester class for the Chukchansi elective. Students in the story, JJ Lahan is the coyote, Aaliyah Legao is the little duck, Genesis Durant is one of our narrators, and Wyatt Lahan.
Hokkien diish hantau. Ilik sumpto hidiaan Hokkien.
Kayu amayo kuliswa wat holushkahon sipin ilgau.
Mien amak hantachon hawit mi amak naash kolestel ilka.
Miin naash julo tishal.
Naash amak khatal.
Ilik mich waa.
Chuyu da Hokki adlen.
Kayu jawan chipne.
Mien ama kayu jedmachon doshe na mien watwati maka shukshuya adlen ilkau.
Miin ama doshto watwating belka miin watwat tanta wa adil ilgal.
Mien watwat poto shukshuya darachu du ponoshne.
Miin dishma she ilgal shukshui shuta amin puna shao.
Mien panata sipin ilkau goliswa shukshuyu choto adlen heshihau.
Miin kayu taenta shukshuya miin dishta apoma.
Kayu semiyaan.
Miin ama yetam samia.
Khayata semia apoma shukshuyaan.
Miin ama samia naash shoonil hitiaan haan tau.
Shone duyaan ilka ama ne banyu.
Hiyo hoke mich gamna. Ama daach.
Creation of land.
Water covered all the world.
Coyote and little duck were above the water.
They wondered how they could reduce the water
So the hills can show.
so they could eat.
The water was deep.
There was land beneath it.
Even though Coyote was a shaman.
He was thinking about telling Duck to get sand from under the water.
He told Duck to dive, and Duck went to the bottom.
Duck grabbed some earth in his claws, like hands.
As he came up, the sand fell out of his hand.
But as he reached the surface, there was only a little sand left in his fingernails.
Coyote took this and made a ball.
Coyote had some seed.
He had just one seed left.
He put the seed in the ball of sand.
The seed can make anything swell up.
It swelled, drawing up the water just like a sponge.
This country was really dry. The end.
So in that second version of our creation story, it was all English, and our narrators for that were Jacob Wynn and Chris McComb. So thank you for those assignments that you guys did. One of the cool things about our stories is that we still have lots of opportunities for people to submit their artwork. We would love to have our own artists helping create the images for these stories. So if you're a great artist, you could reach out to me. We'd love to have people help draw the images for the stories. So for this next portion, we'll begin our shallow history of the Chukchansi language. Hi everyone. So we're going to start with peoples in the Americas, so Chukchansi and our relatives. This set of slides was put together by our linguist team and Chris Golston. So we're going to go through this. Okay, so all non-Africans alive today likely descended from people with a single migration out of Africa, starting 50 to 80,000 years ago, just like all zebras came from Africa. And something that I thought was really interesting when we talk about like recent distant relatives, when they talk about having the same genetic Adam or the same genetic Eve, that they didn't necessarily live at the same time period. And also the descendants necessarily, it's not like they were the only descendants. Other sets of their relatives might have lived and continued on for many generations. It's just maybe they didn't all have girls, or they didn't all have boys, or that line died out, or they didn't have kids. So that's kind of interesting thing to think about when we head into this. So looking at tracing human history through genetic mutations, if you look in the far corner down here, scientists believe that the beginning of people derived from Africa, lower Africa, and you could see that Eve is represented by the blue, and you could see the migration patterns of different sets of people over time that come across to our area in America, even further down to South America. So it shows the genetic Eve, and then also the genetic Adam that descends from Africa and into other areas. It's kind of interesting to think that actually Australia was one of the areas that actually became inhabited long before the Americas did. So it's kind of interesting to see that. And then over here in the circle, it represents America, anywhere from, they're estimating 7,000 to 35,000 years ago, as we cross over into our area. But you could study this more if you want to pause this and kind of check this out and see genetically where we all go back to the same languages. It says all American Indian lineages are derivations of Asian groups genetically. So it was believed that the land bridge is how we ended up crossing over into the Americas. So much water was locked up in the glaciers that North America and Asia were continuous. They also had more recent information with the theory, too, that we could have come over by boat. This set of information shows all of the American Indian languages, or indigenous languages. So you can kind of see linguistic families. It lists different linguistic families. And here's where it becomes American, all the languages of the Americas. So it could be North America or South America. And here's Aleut, which comes from much more northern side, and we'll get to see that on the next slides. And it is a relative of ours, but not more closely related, very more distant related. And Eskimo, and Dene, which you hear Dene having to do with the Southwest region. And then Amerindian, which is where we become a part of the story. So we're all part of the Amerindian languages. But Dene, Eskimo, Aleut are all not necessarily from the more recent same linguistic family. So Amerindians entered the Americas over 15,000 years ago. The Ice Age blocked the Dene and Eskimo Aleut from entering until later. So it was like this window of time where we were able to get into all of these areas in North and South America. But if it's like you didn't cross, then you had to wait for a while. So the Dene, if you look carefully, it's in Alaska and the Canadian region. And then also there's a pocket of that in the Southwest. And I actually had an aunt that was at the Baskin and an aunt that was from the New Mexico area. And they had some words that were similar, and they could understand, at least reasonably, some of their words that they were sharing. So it's kind of interesting to see how they're related. And then the Eskimo Aleut is definitely in the coldest regions of North America. If you look a little bit into, that's Iceland? Greenland does have some. But it's only represented with Eskimo and Aleut, though, in Greenland. Okay, so then Dene, you could see is the dotted area. When we get to this portion, you could see how the Eskimo Aleut, they traveled the Bering Strait area, all those little islands as they get into Alaska, and then these top areas. And it's kind of hit and miss, and it probably had to do with, the topography and the land look like up there, if it's inhabitable. So something that's really interesting, you often hear, oh, there's 100 words for this one word that we have in English, but Eskimo languages don't have 100 words for snow, as it's often claimed. West Greenlandic Eskimo has 2 words, which it says that Quannick, snow in the air, snowflake, or there's Aput, snow on the ground. So how it's being used can also tell you what kind of word it is too, in any language, not just native languages. This slide also shows an example of how words can be built together using prefixes. So Navajo verbs have a set of 10 prefixes that go in a specific order. Unlike Chukchansi, we have free word order, but in this example, they use the root. This word here is the root for tear. And if you look, it's at the end of the word. In this longer version of it, I am plowing again, or I am tearing again. So they could build an idea that makes a whole sentence in English, but they could use one word in Chukchansi. So the Amerindian is our group, and there's about 50 families, and that's one of the questions that you'll want to pay attention to here. So there's about 50 Amerindian families across North and South America. Greenberg in 1987 argues that they're one family, but there are some that disagree. The 50 families are probably related, though, because they can study and see how the words overlap over time and how those languages connect. So we are right here in this corner area. It's kind of like this teal color. But it shows all of our linguistic family. And again, remember that Aleut and Eskimo are not part of that family. So pretty big group, though, that all derive from that same language group. Venusian is the family that we're a part of. They were once a single language that split into languages over time. Related languages are a common ancestor, usually very much extinct at this time. But something really interesting about when we talk about how closely they would be related in a language family, like another language that's in our Venusian family is Miwok, right next to us. And they have been more distantly related to us linguistically and genetically than European languages like French or Spanish, as different as those are from each other. Those differences are much more closely related than what Miwok and Chukchansi were. So it's probably about a 10,000-year-old common language that if we were to go back, we were all the same 10,000 years ago. But it shows kind of all of our linguistic relatives. So like Klamath and Maidu, Nez Perce, Chinook. These are all like areas in Oregon. It shows all how we're closely related. Venusian could be even bigger, including languages from the East Coast to the Yucatan Peninsula in southern Mexico. Venusian languages include Miwok, Ohlone, Maidu, Klamath, Nez Perce, Wintu, and Chinook. So these are all of our linguistic relatives going all the way up to Washington, through Oregon. So California Indian root languages, you could see all the different language families. So California has 6 language families, all of which are found outside of California as well. So they're not just unique to California. We have language relatives in other places too. So this map from 1925 shows Northern Valley foothills and South Valley Yokuts are main divisions of the language. And if you break it down even smaller, like our closer tribes to us that are in the same language family, and a lot of people ask us, are the Monos related linguistically? And the Monos are not related. They're a different language family than us, but the Miwok are related to us. So you could see the Chukchansi, Dumna, Choinumni, Yawamani, so Tuolumne. If we were to have elders talk to each other, we might see some similar words. If you're just talking to them in full sentences, they might not understand our sentences all the way, because even though that we are in the same language family, it doesn't mean that all of our words overlap. They're actually still very unique in their own language. So it doesn't necessarily mean if you know Chukchansi that you're going to know Choinumni. You might have familiar words or say it similarly, but it doesn't necessarily mean one for one. But we go all the way from, this is like Sacramento area, to the Grapevine. And it's mostly in the valleys and then the foothills of all these tribes. And you can see that Chukchansi is right here. We're very on the cusp on the east side of our language family. So these images show relation of words. So if you were to, how did linguists determine that languages were related to each other? You could take a sampling from all these different tribes that are in our area and see how, if you say one, in Chukchansi we say yet. And then in this top one, Tuolumne, it's yit. So it's just off by one little sound. Some of them, we have the same word, like Gashoyu and Tahachian. Let's see, they have some similar words, as us, but it doesn't mean every word is going to be the same. So you could just study them and see how close they are. You could obviously see the pattern and how close they are. And every once in a while, they will have a different word, and it could have been an influence from another tribe near them, or maybe they just changed that one word, but the majority of the words would be similar. So this shows all of the Yokut languages. And where they branch off. So if you look, let's see, where are the Chukchansi? Right here. So us and San Joaquin tribes are the Kenchai and the Dumna. So they'd be similar to us, most similar to us. But you could see how that would get further away. Like this Yawamani, we would go back a little bit further to find similar words, whereas us and the Chowchillan were a little more closely related. We have a lot of useful resources that have come in studies over time. So Alfred Kroeber, he gave us a lot of really great information in 1963, and there were some other, Newman also documented our language in 1944, around 1944. Collard was another one that contributed to some of our old documentation of the language. So I hope that's helpful to everybody, kind of knowing where our language fits in with larger language families and knowing kind of the history of how language got to where it is today for our people. It's important. From here on out, the next history lesson is going to be having to do with how we go from being a fluent society of Chukchansi speakers to where we are today, and kind of the different stages of morbidity. They call it stages of morbidity for languages, and looking and exploring other situations that are similar to ours. We're definitely not the only one. There's 6,000 to 7,000 different languages in the world, and they're saying within the next 100 years we'll be down to 50 languages. So really making that effort to learn our language is going to be really important for everybody. But we're not done with class yet. We are going to switch back. Kind of distracted your brain for a minute on the history portion of it, but we're going to go back and see if you remember the words that we had for this week. We had the target words from our story. So can you remember them? Let's go for a little mini spelling test really quick. Let's look at them one more time because I know it's your first day. So water was ilik, and ilka. Coyote was katyu and katyuan. To cover something is somto and somit. Somto is the past tense form of that, so it already happened. Somit is like happening right now. Duck was a what or what-e. The earth, the ground, the world, holki and holkian. Holki and holkian. Okay, let's see if you can remember what they were. What was the other form of the word for water? We had ilka. What was that first form? Then we had coyote. We have katyuan. What was that first form of the word? Katyuan. Then we had cover. Do you remember that first form of the word? I gave you a hint with somit. Duck. What went with duck? We have a hint with what eat. And do you remember earth or ground or world? And the hint was holkian. So the missing word was ilik. With that clicky K at the end. Ilik. Then we had katyu. Both short on how they say it. Katyu. Somto. Somto was cover. What was the duck. And the earth or the ground or the world is holki. Holki. All right, so we're going to give you a little link, and I'll move over to a website so we could give you some practice with this. So I wanted to show you where you can find a little Quizlet study set to match up the words. So I listed them here in Google Classroom. There's Quizlet terms of the week. So you could use this link here, and the best one is to try the match. And then you could try to be top of the leaderboard to be the fastest one to match it up. Let's see if we can get to that actually. So click match, start game, and you just try to pull over the words so it matches it. Actually, I'm going to switch it because I do realize that our images are with our words, so I'll switch that so then it's a little more difficult for you. But cover was somit solto, duck what, coyote katyu, earth and ground, and see how it tells you what your time is. And you try to have the fastest time out of the group, so everyone will be kind of like against each other. Or you could just do, if you aren't quite ready to just go super fast, you could do learn. It's a little slow today. So if you want to memorize it all, so it'll give you some options, and you just got to try to remember what each one is. So it gives you some different ways that you could practice these words. It's only 5 of them this time, but as we move on, it'll be a little more difficult to remember all the words. So it's good to have that practice. And this is in our Google Classroom. Show you one more time. It's on Quizlet Terms of the Week. This last activity is the real spelling test, and it's not too difficult. It's one of those 5 words that we just practiced the whole time. So the point of this is not to cheat and look at the word and double check the spelling. I really want you to just practice whatever it is you hear, and you'll get better and better as you go along. So it's not that you get the right answer, it's that you're trying your best to hear the sounds and get used to the spelling system. So this first one, you just click on the image of the speaker and you'll hear me say the word, and then you're going to type it into the box, and this will be assigned as an assignment in the Google Classroom. So I'm just demonstrating for you what you'd hear and then where to type it. What? And then here's where you're going to type how you think that you spell that word. Somto. And then again, put your answer next to the box. So there's all 5 words here, all out of order. So do your best on that. And again, I'm not looking for like the perfect answer. I mean, I want you to get the right answer, but I don't want you to force yourself to just check and see what the spelling is. It's really just to help you learn the system as you get used to it. Thanks for sticking with us for this class period. The assignments that we have for homework, if you're willing to do it and you have some extra time, we have the Kahoot. It's like a little quiz. It's in the link in Google Classroom. So it's the history Kahoot. So you could see if you can answer the questions correctly. And for that one, you're going to also have to add in the reading that's posted on there. A lot of that is some detail that was in the reading. Also, try to say in No Creation Story the first 4 lines that we went over, just to know those words really well and see if you could match up the words in there. Also, target words for this week to pronounce them correctly and spell them, and you got a chance to do that on the assignment that we did, the very last assignment for the easel activity that's posted in Google Classroom. You also have the Quizlet practice for the target words. So if you don't quite have them down, you can keep practicing. And if you know them well, maybe you could be the top of the leaderboard for the match for that. And then check out the Chukchansi Ethnography by Gayton in 1948 if you're really into learning about more than just language and you want to learn a little more about our cultural side. It's a really interesting read. All right, so looking ahead, our next meeting will be a live, for those of you who want to come to the live one. Looks like it will be at 6:30 p.m. on Monday, July 17th. So that's part 2 of history, looking at more of like what actually happened to our tribe to cause us to not have our language as we used to. Also future dates, so every other Monday night, which means that we'll be covering vowels on July 31st. August 14th will also be vowels. Then we're going to move into consonants. So consonants will be August 28th, September 11th, September 25th, and then we'll move on to pronouns for October 9th. There's plenty of stuff, plenty of assignments that you can fill in if you're really wanting more stuff in between that, because we're kind of condensing it so that we're not having, I have actually 165 days of lessons, so we're kind of filling in with the most important details, and then if you want more assignments, they'll definitely be available to you in the Google Classroom. All right, have a good week.